Good morning, Bob.
There was the chassan, so his wife died. So he wanted. So somebody read the daughter of Rebbe Akiva.
Okay, we're back. Can you hear me?
I'm not a Talmud Chacham. She's a Bas Talmud Chacham. So Rebbe Akiva Eger says, if you're not a Talmud Chacham, neither am I, and therefore you could marry her because she's a Bas Talmud.
Okay. No, I like the other part. It's the one with the guy who was became an apostate and dressed up in the whole kashif.
Oh, that's a stupid story.
Well, but it's an interesting point. Okay. Starting with our learning sponsors. Okay. The Year of Learning, Friends of Leoni Meiselman, Leah Saber, Bas Chanuk Zundel, Friends of Melaskotsky, Moshe Zelig, Ben Mordechai, Martin Lippman and family, in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bas Pinchas, Friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi Ben Zev, Friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Ben Yaakov, Friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir, Bella and David Adler, in memory of her father, Eliyahu Ben Yosef Cohen. Those who were inspired by our Rebbitzin Emerita, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther Malka Bat Meshulam Yisachar. A month of learning by Malki and Rabbi Dr. Yankee Honig, in memory of her father, Yosef Ben Yecheskel Yehuda, Marsha Federbush, in memory of her husband, Oriel Pinchas Ben Rav Shimon, Gary and Marsha Schrager, in memory of his parents, Freda Bat Hendel and David Ben Yosef, Andrea and David Dolmy, in memory of her father, Tzvi Herschel Hillel Ben Avraham. Have a week of learning by Marsha Federbush, in memory of her mother, Chaya Elka Bat Moshe Akiva, Shelley and Oscar Moll, in memory of her father, Shlomo Reuven Ben Binyamin, Sipora Goldstein, in memory of her husband, Aryeh Yehuda Ben Moshe Shmuel, Barbara Stern, in memory of her mother, Basil Bat Yosef. And today is the 15th of August. We do not have any individual days of learning today. And Hashem have an aliyah, crank Rafiel Velt Yeshua Hashem Latvia, and L'chol B'nai Israel good Gaben Shia.
Amen.
Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to give a long introduction to Gemara Kedushin. Okay, I just want to. I'm just looking at some notes I made from the Shiur. Okay, to point out one aspect, and then we will jump into the text. Okay, Marty, you're here, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So one of the points that he tried to make, that it was based on somebody he had studied, is that when we're going to get to the term niknate, okay, and trying to deal with that term, he was told, look at it as a paradigm, that Kinyan is a model of establishing some sort of relationship between people or between objects. Okay? So that when you have, for example, if you have property, okay, all right, what do? You have a kinyan so that there is a relationship between now an owner and the property, okay? And that is then solidified by usually some sort of exchange of money or a document or things like that.
Changing the thing, it's karka.
Okay, that would be a physical change in the thing, right? That would be another example. Okay, so the paradigm here is now applied to the fact of.
It doesn't have to be a paradigm. It could only be one dime because it's a Shem.
All right, wise guy. Okay, all right. So in other words, so here we have, so the same way, for example, we would have that with purchase of land, or if we have a loan where there's a relationship now between the malve and the love, okay, the person making the loan and getting the loan, and they have to have a document, okay, that establishes what the specific guidelines are. Okay, it could be. Okay, I'm just trying to give you what he presented. And so he wanted to use that model, okay, as to say that when the Gemara oftentimes looks for an interpretation of something, they look for other models, okay, where we could say, hey, this works. And the reason I liked and wanted to share this, okay, is because he wants to say, likewise, marriage reflects an obligation on both sides. And there is also perhaps the exchange of money. That would be one aspect of Kiddushin, okay? Star, that could be a document of engagement, okay? Things like that. So he wanted to use that. So I just thought I would share that with us, particularly because the Gemara is going to say, on what is something based? On the purchase of property, kicha, okay? And that's going to get to that momentarily. All right? So I thought that was worth sharing with everybody, since it's a little different perspective than what oftentimes is presented. Okay? All right, so on Bet Amud Aleph Haisha, okay? Gemara is going to want to ask, among other questions, why does it start off Ha Isha, the woman? Okay? If you're interested, there's a long Tosafot that gives at least 2 or 3 answers, okay, to that issue. Okay? Niknate b'shalosh drachi, and the woman becomes established with a relationship through some sort of acquisition through 3 means. Okay, Gemara is going to then talk to us why the word drachim is used here. Okay, v'konet atzma, and she reacquires her own individual status. B'shtei drachim, with 2 different means. Okay, niknate, she becomes okay, no, niknate, the first is the kedushin. Okay, b'hav, b'kesef, b'shtar, u'b'bia, through 3 different means, through the use of finance, money, through the use of a document, or through the use of conjugal relations. Okay, b'kesef, is it done through kesef? How much we're going to see. Beit Shammai Omrim, according to Beit Shammai, b'dinar, which Rabbi Shimon explained yesterday was a significant amount of silver, okay? Ubishava dinar, and something that's equivalent with that amount of silver, okay? Right? So that would be one example, right? So he has a high standard, Beit Shammai, okay? Beit Hillel Omrim, says Beit Hillel, bipruta ubishava pruta, okay, with a pruta, which was a copper coin, okay? So it was a much smaller amount, okay? So if we want to ask quickly here.
192nd.
Right.
It's almost 1/200th of the dinar.
Right, okay? Obeshava pruta. So if we were to ask for a moment, who is the kula and who is the chumra here? Right?
Shammai is the kula.
Beit Shammai is the kula, and Beit Hillel seems to be the chumra in this case. Okay? All right. Okay. Ubamehi pruta, v'kamehi pruta. How much is this pruta? Okay. Echad mishmona be'isar ha'italki. It's 1/8 of an Italian isar. Okay. Why dafka did they use the Italian isar as opposed to?
This was in the Roman times.
That was one aspect, Roman times. The other point is that there were other kinds of isar coins. Another explanation, at least this shir gave, was that because of the isar or the dinar, okay, that all the money was fairly knowledgeable. People knew, okay, what it was. They knew that there wasn't as much of a question of value, okay. The dinar was known and had a fixed value, whereas the pruta, which because it was copper, okay, the value was questionable sometimes as well. Okay, so what happens? We go on. V'koneh et atzma beget. Okay, she is able to. How? What about the 2 times where it says that she again acquires her own independence? Either konet atzma beget through the use of again another document. Okay, so the kedushin was based on a document. The nisuin is based on a document with a document, right? And the get is a document. So that's why I came back to that example that he gave of loans and purchases and things like that. They all had to have documents. Okay? V'hayibama nikneit babia. Okay? So if that's the case, the sister-in-law is sort of like a subcategory of the general women. Okay, why? Because her method is there's only one instead of 3, okay, by which she becomes, all right, attached, right? V'konet atzma b'chalitza u'b'mitat hayabam. But like the average woman who has 2 ways of gaining her independence, the Yabama also has 2 ways of gaining her independence, right? Okay, it's either chalitza or the death of the brother-in-law.
Assuming there are no other brothers.
Right, assuming there are no other brothers, right? Okay, we go on now. All right, so what happens? Ha'isha nikneit. So we're now interested in the following issue. The language of the Mishnah. And the Gemara is going to go into great detail grammatically. Okay, his comment of this shiur, and you don't have to accept it, but I found it interesting, was that there's a difference, there's an argument among Rishonim as to whether this belongs to the original discussions in the Gemara, or this was a later discussion done by the Saboraim. The Saboraim were those who followed Rav Ashi and Ravina in terms of the editing of the Gemara, and before the Gaonim in terms of its diffusion of the text, so that it became a more accepted text. Okay, and in doing so, I don't want to use the word edited, but they certainly had it.
They added more than edited.
Right. They added terms to the text, which gives us some indication of what's going on in the Gemara. Okay.
You just mentioned common, many other sections.
Many other sections as well. Okay. And another time I will share more about this issue of Saboraim. Okay. All right. Okay. But I just want to point out that as we go, that this Gemara now doesn't seem to follow the usual shakla v'tarya, the usual back and forth that we would expect in a Gemara. That's the point that we're taking. Now, it said ha'isha nikneit, that the woman is acquired in this relationship through 3. Ma'ishna hacha, why is it different here? The Tani ha'isha nikneit, where the language of a Mishnah starts off with saying, I'm going to use my lashon in a passive form about the woman, that the woman was acquired, okay, versus the fact that in the beginning of the second parak of Kedushin, which we won't get to till umpteen number of dapim later, okay?
Some of us will be not even in this country.
That doesn't mean we don't learn the Gemara, my friend. Okay? All right? So versus another Mishnah that starts the second parak, where what does it talk about? All right? Okay, Umayshana Hatam, there, in that case, the Tani Ha'ish Makadesh. Okay, there that it took an active, my language, statement where the husband takes the wife, so to
And it
speak.
says starts with the
And it
man
starts
is
with
the
a man as
subject,
opposed to, farm, right? The farmer takes a wife, etc. Okay, okay. Why did such a difference in language? So that's the first question the Gemara is asking. Mishum dekabai lemitne kesef. So the first attempted answer, why, is because we want to talk about these three
Why does
methods.
it use the word kinyan rather than the word mekadesh?
Okay, all right.
That's the question.
Well, that's part of
He
it.
wants to talk about money.
Okay, because he wants to say, in the other example, we would think that if it's talking about Kedushin, it could have said Haisha, something else. All right, so that's why, because it's going to refer to money. Minalam, on what basis is this? Okay, that he wants to bring money as the first example of the three methods for Kiddushin. Gamar kicha kicha miste Ephron, because he learns it based on Gzera Shava of the words based on kach or kicha, okay, from the example of the purchase of the land by Avraham, okay, in that case. Ktiv hacha. Why? Because it's written here, ki kach ish isha, because we have our pasuk that uses the word kicha, okay, when a man takes a wife, right? V'ketav hatam, and it's written there in the example with Abraham, natati kesef hasadeh kach mimeni. So we have the parallel of the purchase of the land, okay, with money, and here saying that therefore the acquisition, the gaining of a spouse can be done through monetary means. The kicha ikre kinyan, and how do we know, asks the Gemara, that language of taking kicha applies to the example of acquiring something, of a purchase. Okay, dichtiv, why? Because there too we have a statement. Okay, hasadeh asher kana Avraham. Okay, the land which Avraham purchased. Okay. Okay, so therefore, by acquiring the land through money, that implies that was the first example, okay, of being able to acquire a woman, making the kiddushin through a gift, an act of finances, right? That's why I like the paradigm of that I used before. Okay, so what happens? We go to the next omelet. Okay, inami, or possibly we have the following. Okay, maybe we could learn it from the following. Sudot b'kesev yiknu. Okay, that the field, right? That we could say that men usually acquire fields by means of money, all right, and use that possible, right? Right. So what happens? Okay, vidnitne hata. Okay, so let's teach it that way. There, right? Ha'ish kone. So our other example from the beginning of the second parak, instead of using the language of Ha'ish Makadesh, why don't we use the language of Ha'ish Kone? Right, in that case. Right? Right? So again, using the concept of acquisition as one establishing a relationship to that land, okay, as the new owner. Right? Me'ikara Tane Lishna Da'oraita. Levasov Tane Lishna Darabana. Okay, that originally they wanted to use the language found in the Torah, and then afterwards, later on, they used the language of the rabbis,
which is Mekadesh.
Okay, so since the implication is that the rabbis wanted to establish this model of husband and wife in a relationship having a certain important level of kedusha, okay, rather than just yikach isha, okay, that there's a level of kedusha in that relationship. That's where the rabbis introduced the language of Makadesh for that second mission. Okay, umay lishna derabanan. So naturally, the Gemara is going to ask here. So how do we know what was so unique about this rabbinic term to identify it that way? Da asar la kuli alma kehekdesh. Okay, that not once the man is makad. Once the man betroths this woman, she is designated, and that's the language I'm going to use for kaddish. Okay, designated specifically for a particular purpose, namely marriage to this man only, and forbidden to all other men. The same way we can designate something for the Beis Hamikdash, and it only belongs to the Beis Hamikdash and cannot be used by anyone else or in any other manner, right? We have, that's the parallel that the rabbis were establishing, okay? I like that, okay? Anyway, let's go on. So the Gemara then raises the question, okay? Okay, so that is why, okay, it implies that there is a level of kedusha between a husband and wife, starting with the betrothal, right? Now, v'nitnei hacha ha'ish koneh. So let our Mishnah therefore teach in our Parak Sheni there that the man then
Here,
what?
first paragraph.
Okay, v'nitnei hacha ha'ish koneh. So now we come back again to the problem of why did it start passively with the woman, Haisha? Why couldn't we have, if that's the case, okay, and you now have explained to me why the difference in the language between Mekadesh and Kone, okay, why then?
Passive and
Okay, why, right, why not go with the active and say that the man is the one who is Kone, okay? All right? Mishum de kabai lamitna sefer. Why? Because it wants to be able to
talk
teach
about
the
divorce.
end part of the statement where it talks about exiting the relationship. Okay? V'kone et atzma. Okay? And when it says that she's able to acquire her own independence, bedida, where it talks about her herself.
Tananami Reisha.
Tananami Resha. So now we're giving what I'll call a literary, stylistic, okay, stylistic method. So therefore, Tananami Resha Bidida. So they taught it also likewise regarding her, right? So now the Gemara questions, Venitne Haish Kone Umakne. If that's the case, if you want to use a parallel style linguistically, let us teach then that the man acquires, right? Haish kone umakne. Okay, and then, right, go on from there. And disacquires. Let's use that term. Okay, all right. Mishum de ika mita tabam. Why? Because there we also have the situation. We said that one of the means for which the husband no longer has the relationship with the wife is that he's dead.
And he didn't do it.
And right, and that's what the Gemara is going to tell us in a moment. In other words, he did no act that on his part that allows the dissolution of the relationship. Someone else did the act that dissolved the relationship, and that's what the Gemara is going to tell us. The love ihu kamakne, that it wasn't him who dissolved the acquisition. Min shemayahu demakne la. It came as a result of heavenly action, right? Okay, that's what we have. In other words, she gains her right of independence automatically in that situation and not as a result of an act of the
unless, of course,
man.
There's a brother-in-law.
Right. Or unless the Beis Din finds out she gave and put something into his challah. Okay? Okay, so what happens? V'ibayat Emer.
Then she's also severed.
Right. Okay. Then if we buy it, Amer, if you want, I would say as follows. Itana koner, if they were to teach it as acquiring, hava amina, afilu ba'al korcha. I might even thought there that it could be done against her will, right? Tana ha'isha nikneit. And that's why it teaches, okay, that the woman is acquired in a passive form, the midata, that it indicates that it also has to be done with her acknowledgement or her will or willingness. So the woman therefore does become a, if you will, excuse the term, a partner in the situation. Okay? Midata en, if it's with her willingness, yes. Shalom midata lo. But if it's against her will, no. Okay? And therefore, by the way, he didn't give this in the shiur, but we also know the practice of miyun, okay? Where there, all right, where there could be a situation of miyun, where a young woman, okay? All right? That's the case. All right? Okay, so let's go on. Umay area, the Tane Shalosh. So now we're going to ask another question, again, about the stylistic and the language of the Mishnah. Okay? Right? Why does it?
A gendered word.
Yeah. Okay. Why is it that our text says Bishlosh Derachim? Why three using that language as opposed to Shlosha? Okay. So in other words, remember our Hebrew numbers are gender related. Okay. Right. So what is it? Is the Shlosha applied to Drachim? Okay. Is it Shalosh Drachim? If we're going to apply Shalosh as an adjective to the noun Derech, is the noun Derech feminine or is the noun Derech masculine? That's where the Gemara is headed to take us. Okay. So what's happening? The following. All right. And then we go on. All right. With the text. Okay. Umay area detani shalosh. Litnei shlosha. Okay. If we're talking about the woman, then, all right, but we're still talking about that it defines it. It's the as an adjective for the word drachim. Shouldn't it use the feminine shlosha? Mishum de kabai.
Shlosha is masculine. Shalosh is feminine.
Okay. So what?
You switched it. Shalosh is feminine. Shlosha is masculine.
Okay.
So we're trying to associate. We're going to wind up saying the word derech is.
Well, we're going to try to determine what the word derech is. Okay, before we. All right.
It has a masculine. The plural has.
It has a well. We're going to see in this. That's going to be another question. Okay. Litnei shlosha. So let's teach it using shlosha. Mishum de kabai lemitnei derech. Why? Because it comes to explicate the term derech. V'derech lashon nekevahu.
That's the answer.
Okay. And the answer we're trying to give is the word derech. Okay. Is oftentimes considered a feminine noun. All right. Dichtiv. Why? Because we have an example that says, right? V'odata lahem et haderech yelchu ba. All right. And since ba, okay, is clearly the road that you go into it, and here it is used as feminine, so that must tell me that the noun derech is feminine. Ve'ela, but rather, ha-detanya b'shiva drachim bodkim et hazav. But I also have a braita that tells me another case where I have an example.
Derech is masculine.
Where shiva drachim there seems to be that the noun is masculine. That we check out the person that's the zav. Nitne sheva. If that's the case, if you said sheva is feminine, we should say it sheva and not shiva. Mishum de kabai lemitne derech. Because there too, it's coming to describe the word derech. V'ishkachan, and I find derech de ikre lashon zachar, I have examples where the word derech is found as a noun in the masculine. Dichtiv, b'derech echad yetz'u elecha, u'b'shiva drachim yanusu lefanecha. That would be an example of the masculine. Ihachi, if that's the case, kashu karai ha'hadadi. It seems then that these psukim are in contradiction with one another. Is derech then a masculine? Is derech then a feminine now?
Very modern. We're
Okay.
not sure.
All right, it's gender neutral. Okay, is what we would call it. Okay, all right, karai hadade, v'kashinami matnitin ahadade. If that's the case, then our two Mishnayot are problematic in their language. Karai ha'adade lo kashim, that the two verses, one versus the other, are not problematic. Why? Hachad b'Torah kai. Okay, one case refers in example to derech as used by in the language of the Torah, which is feminine. V'Torah ikre lashon nekeva, and the Torah
The word
often
Torah itself
okay,
is feminine.
right? The word why? Because derech is oftentimes used as a parallel word for Torah, and the word Torah itself is feminine. And so in that case, when we use the word derech as I'm going to use the word synonym in a sense for Torah, we give it feminine. Dichtiv, Torat Hashem Tmima, Meshivat Nafesh, as in that passage. Ktav la bilashon nekeva, and therefore we see that the word Torah is used in nekeva,
Derech now is
and therefore derech is used in that example. Okay, hatam, but there in the other case, the b'milchama kai, that where we're talking about the example of a warfare, the darko shel ish la'asod milchama, that it is generally the practice of the men that do warfare. Ve'ein darka shel isha la'asot milchama, and it's not the approach, derech, interesting use of the language there, again, and it's not the methodology of a woman to necessarily do war, although we could question that. V'katav la bilashon zachar. Exactly.
And Rambam the Rambam says that if it's a Melchomas mitzvah,
even the women
are
go
also
out as well. Right. Okay, that's why I said we could question. Okay. All right, so what happens? Right, there too. Okay, then that's why it's written in the masculine. So now we've answered the issue where we thought that there was a contradiction among the psukim. Now we're going to deal with the fact that we thought there may be a contradiction between the Mishnayot, right? Matnitin ahadadi lo kashi. Here too we're going to say, regarding our two Mishnayot, we don't have to say that there's a contradiction. Okay? Hacha delagabe ishakai. Here, okay, we're talking about the subject of the Mishnah, which is dealing with women, okay? And therefore, katane la bilashon nekeva. Okay? That's why it's taught with feminine gender language. Hatam delagabe ish. But there, in the other Mishnah, in the beginning of the second parak, all right, where it talks about a male, all right, kai, the darko shel ish, libdek, okay, or libadek,
ve'ein,
right, okay, right, that it is the situation of the man to examine, ve'ein darka shel isha libadek, but it's not the situation of the woman, okay, to examine. Okay, that the ha'isha nami ba'onis mitam'a, because with regards to a woman, irregardless of the cause that she may shed blood, Okay, if it was a situation,
If it's during the Ziva days.
right, or
and she says
something,
3 times,
right?
she's gonna be
We
a double.
saw examples where she was jumping or sneezing or all sorts of things. All right. Nevertheless, she becomes Tmeya. That's the point. So what happens? Tani Lashon. Okay. Right? So Tani Lashon Zachar. So there it's taught in Zachar. My Tama Tani Shalosh. So what is then the reason that we have the word Shalosh?
Going back to the original question.
Right, so back before. Mishum Drachim. Because we had the word Drachim. So why does the Mishnah use the term Drachim? Methods. Okay? Nitne Dvarim. Let us teach us instead of
the
that.
problem by just using
Okay,
a different
you
word.
use a different term and say, rather than say these methods help by which she becomes
Say
Makadesh
these ways.
or get out, why don't they say there are three things that,
Ways here.
okay, or ways, okay, as opposed to Drachim methods. V'nitne Shlosha, and then still teach it with Shlosha, Mishum de Kavai, Lemitne Bia. Why? Because they wanted to be able to fix and teach it regards to Bia. Ubia ikre derech. And the term Bia, which was one of the three examples, okay, is often used euphemistically in the word derech. Right? The derech, the man, the way the man is with a woman, things like that. Dichtiv, as we see, v'derech gever ba'alma, kain derech isha mina efet. Okay, and we had there the way of a man with a right, and alma, right, right, and the way of the woman. Okay, in that case.
In adultery.
All right. So what happens? Ha, tenach bia. So the Gemara says, fine. I understand then that because you wanted to use, we use the term derech, okay, in regards to the fact of bia. But remember, in our Mishnah, bia was only one of three methods. There were two other methods, right? Kesef and shtar. Okay, so if that's the case, if you have those two versus one, why did you use the word not? Shouldn't it be more appropriate to use a word that reflects the majority of terms? That's what we're going to see. Kesef ushtar, my ikalamema. But you have the example of the money and the document. What therefore are you going to say? Mishum bia. You're simply saying they use the word derech instead of davar because of the one example. Vatane tarte, teach it based on the two examples, atuchada, that come and, so to speak, I don't want to say override, but they're more numerous. Two against one, exactly. Hinach nami tzorach biyanin. But these also ultimately need,
not just prelims.
okay, ultimately need a final act of, right, relations, right? V'ibayat ema. And if you want, I would say as follows: Ha mani, according to whom is this particular position?
No. Who is the author of our mission?
Yeah, whose position is it that presents it this way? Rabbi Shimon. It's the view of Rabbi Shimon. The Tanya Rabbi Shimon, says Rabbi Shimon in a Braita, Omer mipnei ma amra Torah. On what basis was it that the Torah says, Ki ikach ish isha, that the man takes the woman, velo kata, and it did not write, mi tilakach isha laish, okay, that the woman was taken by the man, right? Mipnei shedarko shel ish lachzor al isha, because it's the normal pattern of life that the man goes after, pursues, searches out, however we want to translate that. Okay, a woman goes after the woman. Ve'ein darka shel isha lachzor al ish. that may have been true in their time. We can't always say it's true today.
Sadie Hawkins.
Okay, but it's not common for the woman to chase after the man. Okay,
In religious circles, it is common. In
for what?
religious circles, men go after the woman.
That's what it just said.
Right, that's what they're saying. That was the more accepted method. Okay, certainly in their day, and in some ways in our day too,
And I'm
depending.
saying, in our day, in religious circles.
Yeah. Okay.
In our day, in religious circles, the parents do it. The kids have nothing to do with it.
Well, we'll see. All right. Now, what happens? Mashal Adam. How can we compare that? That the man is the one who searches for a wife. Okay. All right.
Reuven doesn't like this muscle.
Okay. Right. Mashal Adam she'avdalo aveda. We have an example of a man who loses an item. Okay. Mi choser al mi. What? Which searches after which? Baal aveda machzor al avedato. The person who lost the item is the one who searches after it. Okay, and it's not the lost object that searches after the person. Okay.
They don't have one of those little Apple tracer things.
Okay. No, you get an air tag for your
That's
luggage.
what I mean.
Right. Okay. Vahaditznan. But here, aren't we taught elsewhere in a Mishnah? B'sheva drachim bodkim et hazav. Okay. That it said there in that example, 7 ways that a man, that they examine
People
these.
can become a zav.
Right? Litnei dvarim. So why shouldn't we therefore change? If after all of this we've said the reason that we did in our Mishnah was bia and all of that, and the man, etc., etc.
And we didn't use the word.
And
we used derech.
And we used derachim instead of dvarim. So here's why don't they use dvarim in that example of the zav, right? Hatam hakamashmalan the darka the michla yetera latuye lidei ziva. That's why, because it comes to tell us that there are multiple ways by which a person can become a zav. Namely, number 1, overeating. Okay. Second example, the darcha the mishtaye yetira latuye lidei ziva. Or that is second way is overindulging in drink. Okay, could cause that. Vahaditnan, and the fact that it teaches again. Etrog.
It's a good place to stop, actually.
Actually, that's where the shiur stopped, right? I just want to point out.
If you can go over it, then you have to go over a couple of lines.
Okay. Okay. So they're trying. So having said that, they're now going to try to bring another example. Okay, very quickly. All right. But what about the fact that it teaches etrog shaveh ilan b'shlosha drachim litnei dvarim? Okay. So again, taking that example, why the use of the word drachim there instead of the word dvarim? Mishum de ba'inin matne sefa. Why? Because it has to teach something at the end. V'yerek b'derech echad sefa nami nitnei davar. So that's where we'll pick up tomorrow on the very bottom of the Amud there. Okay? All right.
Reuven doesn't like the analogy.
Of what?
Of
a man going after a woman?
No. That
like going after a lost object?
Yeah, because the lost object cannot go look.
Okay, so I understand. So the fellow whose shiur I listened to.
The woman could go look.
No.
Okay.
The analogy is that Adam lost a body part.
He lost the rib.
Went looking
and
for
that's,
it. That's why
right.
men look for
women. That's what he used in the shiur to make that. I understand that, but that's what he used as the example. That since woman was created from the rib of man and he lost that rib, so therefore he's looking for something which will complete him.
Right.
Okay, and
that's
finding the woman. Okay, finding the right woman is what completes you
That's
in
why
life.
in slang they call women.
Thank you, Rabbi Green. Have a good day.
If the film doesn't fit, then they get divorced.